We're on site more than we are at home with our own family. We're in our work boots more than we are in our own beds. Yeah. So believe in the fact when somebody is not talking today or had not been themselves, why don't you just put your arm around them and ask them if they're okay? Because for me, I don't think enough people talk up, speak up. But let's get construction talking. Let's support each other, because without us human beings doing the great things we are doing, we would still be living in underneath trees or in huts. Now, if we can build amazing skyscrapers and technology, surely we can listen to each other.
Hi, Gavin Coyle here again. I'm the Gaffer podcast. Amazing guest. Can't wait to introduce this guy. He is a packet of energy, I can tell you that. And already I'm buzzing just to hear it out. Shane Manogue, originally from Ireland, but moved over to the UK at a very young age and has become very successful in the construction and facility management sector. And himself and his wife are actually trailblazing in the industry and doing a lot of really innovative, creative, and I would suggest disruptive movements within the construction sector. Shane, it's great to have you.
Well, thanks for having me, and a fellow Dublin man as well at the same time. So thanks for that introduction. It's really nice to hear it from somebody else's words instead of me thinking it all the time.
Well, look, it's true, because I think we might even need the first time ever, but I think we might need 2 episodes to cover this one.
Okay, well, can talk fast if you want.
All right, you'll definitely, I think we'll have to get you back at some stage because your journey is so fast and so fast moving, and so, you know, you can nearly put a documentary or a movie together in terms of where you're at, you know. Where do we start? Like, you know, you were born and then you're here. So what happened in the middle, as we say?
Yeah, so 91 came over to the UK from my mother. Obviously, me and my mother moved over here, single family. Went through school, kind of had an engineering mindset at the beginning. I think I was taking things apart when we were living in Dublin. It used to drive her mad. But I think she saw there was a clear want to see how things worked. And she kind of allowed me then to go off working with uncles and stuff during my half terms and being plumbing and stuff. Just everything about construction. I'm your typical lad that started from the ground and really found his feet as you went through construction.
Yeah.
Be it started off in plumbing, kind of mastered plumbing within a couple of years. Nothing against plumbers, by the way, but there's only so many baths that can be underneath and so many piping systems. I wanted to know how you build a wall. Well, how do you do this? How do you build the roof? How do you build the foundations?
You wanted to know everything.
So I wanted to know everything. So really, like a sponge.
Where did that come from?
Kind of came from my dad, to be fair. My dad was very kind of like intuitive about understanding the basis of life, number one, but also how he evolved and history and why human beings have done this and mechanical evolution and the industrial revolution. So he was very history driven. And really, for me, it's the love of seeing how things are built. I've always been mad. I grew up in a place called Blanchestown, and they were building the new Blanchestown kind of housing estate. So from quite a young age, I was watching these big diggers going up the road, and it just fascinates any child. Construction really fascinates most kids.
It was the urban sprawl out of the get the community out of the city centre and bring them out to the outskirts of Dublin at the time, and. In terms of growing up, what age were you when you left Ireland?
We left Dublin when I was 10 and didn't really settle properly into a place in Harrow, kind of Kingsbury area, which was quite a big Irish community down that way. So I ended up finding myself within quite a nice mix of Irish community as well as being in Great Britain. And then got the opportunity to go out and do some plumbing and started kind of getting my feet underneath the table in construction.
But were you like another one of the export out of Ireland immigrants, if you like, in terms of, you know, there's not much opportunity in Ireland, look across the water, let's do it? Well,
to be honest with you, we were kind of slightly forced, because obviously back in 89 Ireland went through a recession which didn't really drove what minimal jobs were available.
The 80s were...
So the 80s were quite rough in Ireland, but at the same time the mother saw that there was an opportunity over here. She works in drug and alcohol and domestic violence addiction,
counselling,
etc. Worked on a number of advice panels for the government.
And where does that come from? Like,
That unfortunately comes from the fact that she was previous addiction, single mother herself, was an addict, which 70s in Ireland was really hard to trying to swerve away from that, especially
Yeah.
in Dublin.
The
Came over
80s,
the 80s,
heroin.
heroin, etc., and especially moved into Camden when she was 16 in the UK. Came back to Ireland, and unfortunately, due to being effectively quite a Catholicism kind of mindset of our family and the people, effectively we had to move to England to find a better start for ourselves because there wasn't much going on in Ireland.
She's a great woman.
She is a very good woman. We've actually just retired her back to Ireland recently.
Oh, wow.
So she needed
went
to go
full
home.
circle.
She went full circle. She's back and she's a Galway girl herself originally. She's now living
Okay.
in Tumna.
Okay.
But yeah, so really our journey started off hand in hand, going across that kind of line at Aer Lingus in Dublin.
Yeah.
And flying into London with our bushy eyes and
I remember remember the 80s. I remember the smog.
Yeah.
Was the biggest thing that, I know that, like, there was a lot of look, the communities were raising themselves at that stage, really, weren't they? And then obviously the church, that's another podcast altogether. But yeah, so when you went over to England again, you're like, I know there's fire in your belly anyway, but you had this hunger in you to get out. So in terms of school, you just...
Well, school, in all honesty, I really struggled with school.
Okay.
Struggled with school because also I'm a neurodivergent. I'm ADHD and dyslexic. And again, that...
When was that diagnosed?
It wasn't diagnosed until I was 32 because I mastered so well. Because I was such a bright... With what you find probably with ADHD sufferers or people that have... I say sufferers because I effectively probably did suffer in silence for a long time. But I was acute and clever enough to be able to kind of navigate my way through life, especially education. But a lot of that time, sometimes it was I might have been able to work out a math sum, but I'd done it in my head. Putting it down on a piece of paper was a hard one. Now, I didn't have no Casio or a watch hidden up my arm or anything, but my teachers used to go mental because I couldn't show them my working out. But I used to say to them, is that the answer? And then they turn around and say, yes, it is, but I want to see the working out. But I've given you the answer, so there's the answer. What's the points for? The answer or the working out? So I used to kind of push. I used to always be honest. I used to push the norm a little bit, but then at the same time, I was then seen as disruptive, but I wasn't really disrupted. I don't think.
Yeah, but...
I think a lot of it was down to the fact that I was potentially not being pushed mentally, or because I maybe not understood the question, because my mind might move really fast. But then also where I would answer people's questions for them. So the teacher just thought it was just being smart arse.
Yeah.
So effectively out you went. There was times, and most of the times I used to turn up my classes by the time I got to my GCSEs, and there'd be a table already outside the door.
Wow.
But for me, it's amazing to see how schools have really gone 360.
Yeah.
You understand, be it colours in the rooms, you understand, be it certain types of training processes or education ways.
Assistant teachers.
But unfortunately, I am one of a large number of adults, in specifically around my age, that slipped through the gap, and we just all thought that normal was a normal. In my world, normal is only a button on a washing machine. Every single person has a fingerprint, in all honesty, because we're unique. So for us to work to one curriculum is, I personally think, completely outdated. Yes, they've reformed recently, but unfortunately I was in that kind of group of people that got missed.
Wow.
But it didn't stop me. It actually gave me more fire. And to be honest, I probably learned more in the corridors than I've done in the classes.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about Silicon Valley, like a lot of the CEOs and
in the lifts.
No, but a lot of CEOs like had the same sort of issues holding them back, and you just find another way, don't you? Like I remember one of my teachers had said that to my mother. The brother was all right, but he said, as regards Gavin, he'll just find another way.
And I think, you know what, and that is all the way down to how would you say somebody's kind of unique skills, been able to not stop at an answer. And I think an answer is not an answer. I don't really look for answers. I think there's a lot of solutions out there.
Yeah.
And that's where, as I say, you will always find your way if you believe in your ability to find solutions, not answers.
The system's generic. Years ago, it was a very generic system. In fairness, I think they're a bit more flexible these days, and even I've young kids going to school, and it's fantastic the support that they're getting. And I'm so sorry you had to go through that, because imagine bullying and being ostracized into.
It still happens today. Still happens
Go
today,
on.
in all honesty.
No way.
In a way, the reason why I've kind of stepped out of some of the construction activities I was doing is I found a way of being able to develop better softwares for people than actually get their points across. So I will go into boardrooms. Now, bearing in mind that I started off as a plumber, then went down in civil engineering, then became one of the youngest senior engineers running £100 million schemes
You.
in RC frame. And then I became a project manager at 26 looking
Oh
after.
my God.
So, and then I went out to Saudi Arabia at the time I was 30 looking after 800 and something people.
Yeah.
But when you go into a boardroom and people get this, and now this is me kind of quite chilled a little bit. And sometimes I'm kind of really bouncing off the wall with all my energy because my energy is really close to aggression in a way sometimes, because I believe not people get confused with being aggressive. It's actually ambition. Actually, I can see. Actually, I've seen it put in place. Actually, I believe in my ability.
Yeah.
But when unfortunately you get the kind of the people who come towards the end of their careers, I'm probably talking between the 50 to 60 to 70-year-olds that are still in the boardrooms. They can't embrace this creative energy. Explosion that walks into the room. I've had circumstances within networking that I've been called 100 mile an hour. Now 100 mile an hour, in all honesty, is probably a negative word that you say about anybody because it gives off a little bit of erraticness. If somebody's 100 mile an hour, how are they supposed to do things right? Actually, but I've got a sophisticated team around me that have had a lot of training about neurodiverse. They know how to handle me. I get up in the morning an hour before the wife because my energy is like a nuclear reactor, so I can go and walk it off, so I can think clearly. So all them kind of things actually help to me, but I still struggle to this day with people still getting confused. To the point sometimes I might even think you're doing it as class A drugs. But I wake up with this energy every morning. I go to bed with this energy every morning. And I wake up and go again. And be honest with you, the people that I've come across that have had that negative or that kind of, bias view, they're the ones that need to be educated. They're the ones that need to be put on neurodiverse or training to understand. Because unfortunately, that culture can be quite toxic that can then filter down through their business.
Well, I know a lot of construction guys, with the whole school curriculum, even without putting a label on it, struggled. And I know a lot of the listeners here today listening to you will go, bang, that's me. And that as well as I do. The construction industry, in fairness, doesn't have barriers up in order to get entry. If you want to create value for yourself and you want a career, construction is a fantastic opportunity for anybody, especially now with the lack and shortage of labour, of good labour. There's great opportunities in construction. So, when you went on your plumbing and went into your engineering, did you go straight in with a tier 1 company, Shane, or, how'd you break, where was the breakthrough into sort of,
It's kind of a bit of a funny one. I actually got to the point I was, as I said, kind of got to the point that I kind of knew plumbing, heating. I was getting bored of that. I think really one of the things that for me I was on a YTS scheme. So I was on something like 60, 70 pound a week, if that. I was working 6 days a week, but 2 of them days were actually at college.
Wow.
But then on top of that, I had to pay for my travel to be able to get to where I was being picked up.
There's 70 gone.
70 quid straight away. So by the end of the weekend, I was borrowing money off the mother or not going out at all. Wow. So for me, it was more, I was getting towards 17, 18, looking at some of my friends. I've either been off to university enjoying life, or there was me at the end every weekend with no money after working a hard week. And it is a hard week when you're actually in boiler rooms, you're in attics. Yes, you are learning. Yes, it's all part of that, but there's part of the fact that I'd already been trained and it's already been learning since I was 14. So I was making a considerable amount of money for a number of people that I was working for. And so for me, it was, I got bored, but also I felt I was being kept at a glass ceiling of just basically doing plumbers' mate jobs where I could already do more plumbing than some of the plumbers that are actually on their books. But then I came across a guy, a good friend of mine actually from school, Patrick English, project manager now. But he was working on Paddington's Goodyard for Bovis Lendlease. And it wasn't Paddington's Goodyard. It was Triton Square. So he was working for a company called PC Harrington's, no longer around with us, unfortunately, Pat Harrington. And I went and worked for them, and I went from £70 a week to being on £110 a day, learning how to do RC frame construction, groundwork, civil works, and my mind just went, boom. Wow, there's more than being in a boiler room. Oh my God, there's shuttering here, there's rebar there, there's drainage. I'm getting to see the whole build. So that's really where I kind of landed on my feet. The money was, by that stage, actually, I think it was too much money at that age, because mother would take a lot of it off me and just protect it. But then put that aside, for me to be around 12 different trades and very forward thinking, be it foremans, engineers, very welcome, very training.
Well-oiled machine.
But it was a very well-oiled machine, because you probably find within the kind of RC frame world, every single person is very key to get that core, or that get that, be it that building up.
It's,
So you
it's a manufacturing process. People call it construction, but
Yeah.
really manufacturing is the main part. We've one of America's top framing companies, the owner coming on in the future podcast, and I like phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I can see system, processes, people, culture, all the good things that you can put together. Because in fairness, you know, construction is very dynamic, and it's very sort of changeable in split seconds. Whereas with the framing, you can kind of model it out, can't you?
Yeah, yeah. And I think also with the frame, what I found was, and it's still today, because we do smaller versions of frames that I used to do for the construction side of our business.
Yeah.
But you've got that brotherhood, or that group of people that are very key to every role, from the person that opens up the gate, somebody that cleans down the street, to the person that's setting out, the project manager, all one team. And the one thing that I will always say is, yes, I might have been successful in my employed career, but it wasn't just me. There was the whole team behind me, and I brought that team with me. What
was your position, Shane?
In what?
In the framing? In
the framing. So I started off as basically a cube boy. So that's how I started off.
110, not bad.
Yeah, it wasn't too well. I used to make a lot of cubes.
I tell you what, you negotiated well.
But the good thing about it wasn't just a cube boy, and the reason why I got a pay rise to 110 within the first 3 weeks is Tom Harrison was one of the best foremans I ever had, and he could just see me, and he saw that I wasn't just picking up the cubes and doing the tamping. I was then down with the steel fixers working out how to tie rebar. Then I was up talking to the shuttering chippers about the pan systems and what's the difference between traditional shuttering and pan shuttering.
All that
So he
curiosity.
just was like, oh my God.
You're like a sponge.
So by that stage, it was about the fact that he just incentivized me to keep going out and getting on the end of, be it tools and learning, not just going doing the tamping the cubes like normal cube or concrete testers, should we call them. Basically, you go and sit back in the cabin and sitting there all day waiting for the next roll of concrete coming in. But actually, I was more forward thinking and wanted to learn. I was there to do one thing, is to absorb a site that I'd never seen.
Well, you had the fire in your belly as well. And like, I was just, as you were talking there, I was thinking to myself as well, somebody must have grabbed you and put their arm around and said, I'm going to look after this guy. Yeah. Was that mentor? Was that guy?
No, there was another guy called Tony Lyons, who's now with a very well-known RC frame stroke subcontractor. And he really put his arms around me, I think, a little bit more, because when I was earning more money, I think Mondays became harder to turn up on as a younger lad. So where he was quite ruthless, all of his other kind of, as back in the day, you used to be able to call people chain boys, etc. But actually, we're nowadays you're called assistant engineers.
Yeah.
So effectively, you were unless you had, because nowadays you've got the robotic engineering, the EDMs, etc. But when we were doing setting out, you were very important that the chain boy or assistant was really on site. If he wasn't on site or if he was late, you'd actually then hold up a number of people. So he actually saw something in me, sat me down one day and said, look, if you're going to make something in life, you need to come in on Mondays.
Yeah.
You know?
It would be a good start anyway.
Good start. Definitely good start.
But so was he part of the same company that you were with?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was two mentors really that you had within. How long were you with them?
I was with him 5 years, and just from different projects. So I started on, be it Triton Square, went over to Paddington's Goodyard down to Barclays Building down the Canary Wharf. Brilliant. And then went over and done the Swiss Re, which actually had a break from Harrington's, went off to Burns Brothers for the Swiss Re, and then went down to Wembley Stadium and then finished off at Westfields.
Wow.
So very big.
I remember all that was going on at the time.
So it was a very busy time in London. There was a lot, and there was really only...
It was very condensed as well, wasn't it? It was kind of like all within one sort of local area. And age-wise, you were in around 26, 28, 30?
By that stage, I was around about 21, 22, and then decided then to go and do my full qualification for civil engineering, H&C, and then I went on to a bridge course for civil engineering as well. And I've done all of that in my own time, as well as working. So working and getting knowledge in my world was better than actually gone to university, because I would have struggled, because I've already knew that I was struggling when I was in my secondary education.
Yeah.
And then I went into college. I slightly struggled a little bit in college, but I found the practical, because I knew I was going to be back on site the next day.
Yeah.
I felt my anxieties kind of dropped down. I didn't feel I was out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so for me, it was a perfect, and I think Lang O'Rourke done something very similar. Burns done something very similar after a while, where they started doing this release,
Yeah.
actually realizing that it was easier to have people on site working for the 2-3 days and then releasing them for two or
Yeah,
three
let them
days as
go
well.
back as a mature student, kind of a scenario. And so, like, there's just yourself and your mother.
Yeah, but then my
So,
mother basically found a partner, and then we had 4 brothers and sisters.
oh my God.
So I got 4 brothers and a sister.
Right.
Sister's out in Vietnam as we speak, doing a teaching contract. She's, I think, she's 22 now.
Living
the
the
rest,
life.
and the rest of the brothers are in construction in some capacity.
Brilliant.
So Rory runs an electrical company. Niall works on HV works down in the underground, and then Lorcan is a coder for kind of construction technology. But he's based
Brilliant.
out in Canada.
Out in Canada. Wow.
So the great woman let us all go.
I'll tell you what, she's some woman, fair play to her.
yeah,
Yeah. So where do we go then? Where does the next part of the journey bring you?
Yeah, so the next part I found was basically in UK, especially in London. London's kind of started slowing down. The construction industry's kind of hit a bit of a skid. 1999. It started kind of more works outside of London. So I then started migrating myself to the likes of Liverpool. Worked in Liverpool, Leeds, Manchester. Really,
Framing.
Framing. But more importantly, I'd done about 5-6 years in framing. So then I started getting involved in design side of things, being a design part of the design team,
Yeah.
pre-construction, post-construction, and then also then I started getting involved in kind of modular pods, where you could actually design pods that you slide in from a
Yeah,
factory.
that became a big thing, didn't they?
Yeah. So I really, as my engineering brain started kicking in and started then researching where the next projects were coming up, I was like, I want to be on that project. I want to learn. So I left the RC frame world, and I then worked for Ardmore, because I wanted to know how to do the whole package.
Yeah.
Not just so Addington's done the frame, so I ended up just managing the frame, and then I started managing the pod installs, and then the full projects with a number of senior project managers that mentored me as well.
Amazing. Amazing.
There's
So
one gentleman actually, John O'Shea, who's Sean O'Shea is the construction director now for Ardmore.
Yeah.
So I worked with Sean when Sean was about 17, first into construction.
Yeah.
He was I was the engineer on site. I was obviously mentoring or training Sean. Now Sean's construction director for Ardmore, and John was kind of part of that, keeping us together and kind of training us during that period
yeah,
of
and the
time
mixed
as well.
developments was really kicking off as well, wasn't it? So like, and you come across very, I suppose, the qualities to do what you were doing. Is there a set quality?
I think you need to be a people person. You need to understand that you need to be able to speak from people, from being in a boardroom, for a meeting room, down to site level. You need to make
Yeah.
sure that everybody understands their role.
That you're a connector of all those people.
And a real connector. I'm a real kind of advocate of information is power and knowledge is key in
Yeah.
a way. So making sure that everybody was an informed decision, what was happening on this day, what the risks were, and what was the end goal, and we shared the end goal at the same time.
Yeah, but I get the sense that you're very detailed.
Yeah.
Very analytical.
Well, that's where I get kind of slightly, how would you say, upset when I'm getting kind of said that I'm 100 mile an hour. With ADHD, it's not attention. It's not like you just kind of walk away from something because it's got your attention.
Is it tolerance?
It's basically it's something that absorbs you. So for instance, probably the best way I could say is when I was saying I was doing research for engineering,
Yeah.
because I was an engineer, and the money will follow later, but the engineering is what I was actually put on this earth for, is to look at engineering, because I love engineering.
Yeah.
The byproduct of that is actually getting paid.
Yeah.
But I came across basically a water cleaning system that came out of a pragmatist plant called the NEWP, which is basically a water filtration system that cleans smelter water and puts it back into a potable use. Found one of them. I was on the World Engineering kind of, be it on YouTube, very early days on YouTube.
Yeah.
But it was in Pittsburgh. And then I found out they were building the same thing out in Saudi Arabia. So I literally tried everything I could to get out to Saudi Arabia.
Cool.
And it wasn't until, to be honest with you, going back to probably the day that defined my life was the day I found myself so confused in relationships, so confused in construction, and so confused in life.
Yeah.
Because I'd never got diagnosed with ADHD, where I found myself standing on the edge of a platform at Wembley Park, wondering, is this it? Is this all I've got? Is this the moment? It wasn't until I had my best friend popped into the back of my head and told me to sit my arse back down on the couch, on not the couch, on the bench behind me, and give him a call, which I did.
No
And he would
way.
literally pick up the phone like that, and I said, "Did you just He said, no, I was just thinking about you.
Oh my God.
So from there, he said, look, bang, he ran down, sat next to me, and we had a real open conversation on what was going on. And then 2 weeks later, bumped into my wife, who basically is my wife now, met her at Carnival. And then 2 weeks after meeting her, I had to tell her I'm going to Saudi Arabia for a year.
Come on.
So I got headhunted for Saudi Arabia. So my life just seemed to slowly, when I actually then decided to embrace who I am, embrace my brain, and understand it more.
Yeah.
And the best thing I ever did was went out to Saudi Arabia after that project that I was chasing. And I worked 15, 16-hour days just because I was so absorbed in it, training the guys how to do properly. Before I went out there was 18 deaths. There's 0 deaths when I went out there. There was living quarters were shocking. I built cricket pitches, volleyball pitches, cinema pitches. Production levels went up by 60%. I put in workshops so we can teach them how to do traditional form work instead of banging nails through here, there, and everywhere.
Wow.
So I kind of got that, and that for me felt like the universe has allowed me give back, but actually people to listen to me.
Yeah. And you've become an authoritative figure within the industry.
And also bearing in mind there was language barriers there, and what you'll probably find in Saudi Arabia, when people nod, they mean no.
Yeah.
So when they do this, it means yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that means no.
Yeah, I know, I got that. Yeah.
So it was about stripping it back to basics. And it was great to do that because I'd learned a lot from the age of 14 all the way up to the time I was 30 to be able to put in that kind of mindset, process, training, educating, and then success came off the back of that. And by the time I'd left, they'd held a cricket tournament in my name with 4,000 people and a cup. So I felt I did what I needed to do when I went out there, and I came back a different person.
Yeah. And you're very humble about it as well, in fairness, Shane. You don't, like, even my discussions with you before and stuff like that, like, you know, you put your head down, you got stuck in, and a lot of people are struggling with mental health, especially in the construction industry, because of the volume of people in construction. And that's a very inspiring story that, you know, but for you to check yourself and pull yourself back takes a lot of power, I would imagine, and, you know, internal, something inside you twigged internally.
I think, do you know what it is? I've with this abundance of energy, and I played every single. I played for London. I played for a Gaelic team that were unbeaten in 7 years in Ireland, in England. I was lucky enough to come over with a number of people during the 90s. Most of us, 2 of us, were from Dublin. We ripped the hell out of the teams, Gaelic teams. I played senior football at the time I was 15. So I had that winning or that beat. If I was defeated, I could get up and go again because I believe who I was.
I came from your mother.
And that came from the mother, but also came from my dad in a way, even though I didn't know him too much, but it was also very similar to how he was. It was about that, if we made it here by ourselves, we can do anything as well. If I can live in Saudi Arabia and not have a single friend that I went out there with, to be able to then be the person that I come back, I can do anything. But more importantly, I also realized that a lot of my stresses, and that guy that was on this side of the platform was a defeated man. And defeated because of a number of things. Stresses on building sites, the pressure that I was under on getting frames done, and the people that were looking up to me, and also having to potentially release people on subcontracts at halfway through a project with less than a week's notice because a director's come in and said we need to release 15 people today. That's heartbreaking.
We're not hitting our figures.
And we're not hitting the figures, and that's unfortunately the downside of business. If you're if you're projecting not enough outcome, or they've undercut it, or there's been a problem or a delay, or there's the architecture issue. People's jobs have to go, especially subcontractors. So,
but that's out of your control, Shane, at the time. And you couldn't control that. You know, but then all of a sudden you were left with the moral dilemma of, well, Shane, you're going to have to tell them to go. Because, you know, we just run the numbers. You run the crew. And so you were left with that hurt. So somewhere along the line, there must be some sort of, like, obviously empathy is a big thing for you.
Massive, because at the end of the day, I also I'd go out on my way and see if I can make phone calls to put 1 or 2 of them people, be it back into work, or even just say, look, I know there's an opening up somewhere. And I've kind of made a reputation in specifically around LinkedIn and networking. I'm not just out there to network. I'm not a salesman. I'm a person that
you wear a heart on your sleeve as well.
If there's somebody that needs a helping hand.
But I think there is a bit of, I had hoped that over a period of time within construction that it would start weeding itself out, but there's still that bravado, you know, ruthlessness that's kind of championed within construction. Geez, he's a man that gets the job done, or she's a woman that gets the job done. Or, you know, if you want someone if there's a mess on a job, send them in.
Yeah.
He'll turn it around, and then they send in the bully.
Yeah.
Or you know, and in fairness, they get results because.
Yeah, they do, but at what cost?
At what cost?
What cost? There is, you know, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're not robots.
Yeah.
We're here to deliver a service, and sometimes that service is then stretched or pressurized because of no undoing of the workforce. It could be other elements or other factors that are put in place. It could be poor programming, poor rates, etc.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get your normal. What I normally find in construction, and this is always what always happens, is called the 80-20 effect.
Go on.
So effectively, and I've said this even to my lads, and I said, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a celebration every time you knock down a wall? Because of the fact it's easy to knock down a wall, it's harder to build a wall. Yeah. So at the beginning of a project, you have 100% of work to do. What you find is you'll get 80% of the work done 20% of the time at the beginning.
Yeah.
But then people think oh my God, I've only got 20% of the work to do, and we're already weeks ahead. But actually the 20% comes back and kicks you in the arse, because it takes 80% to finish the 20% of work because of the finishing. The detail, all them small things that you think would only take an hour, like hanging a radiator. What happens if you don't hit your studs, X, Y, and Z? So I've seen this in construction and maintenance. More importantly, in maintenance, when you send somebody in to do a 5-minute job, nothing's 5 minutes. Every factor can come into play. And then the worst thing about it, the client would then push you to bring on more labor. How many more people can you get in this room to do this room?
Yeah.
So you've better to extend the program or take the pressure and stresses off everybody instead of flooding the job with additional work. And unfortunately, you find that comes from recruitment. Not saying all recruitment is poor, but you're not going to get the top end guys off a recruitment company at thelastminute.com to come to site on Monday to be able to get you ahead of your program. And again, I'm speaking out of experience here.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Like, even from a small scale, myself and my wife would renovate and buy old properties and renovate them and put them back out for rent or whatever else. And we learned pretty quick that we might have aspirational designs for putting into that project. And we learned that as much and all as it might look good as an end product, if there's any sort of detail or intricate detail within the construction, it's a no-no. Yeah. Because yes, you can get it done with the right tradespeople or whatever else, but like ultimately, once you start getting sort of more intricate with the detail, things start effectively going wrong. Of
course they do.
And they start, and time is money. And as soon as you start slowing the clock down, money starts going up.
Well, I'll be honest with you, and just kind of opened up a memory bank there. So as part of kind of the change in housing, we seem to kind of go into a lot of new starts and hospitals during kind of the early 20s.
Yeah.
And one of the projects that we worked on was up in Oxford, in Teddington, and we were building a new cancer treatment centre as well as another new wing for the hospital there. And I just couldn't believe the architectural design. Surely our hospitals should be made for one thing: to treat patients and save lives, or make life easier while they're being passed on. Yeah. But to find that corridors had these really curved walls and all these intricacies. Yeah. And you wonder why the project overruns budget wise and cost wise, and it's not getting completed as fast as possible. Because a square room is a square room. You should just be able to put somebody in a square room that needs to be treated. And I've seen so much.
They're not going to care about a curved wall.
They're not going to care about a curved wall if they're on their deathbeds or they're in a time of need. So for me, it was just seeing how spend and how things don't meet the needs and requirements for the actual.
Well, in fairness to in fairness to the architectural industry, they have evolved and became more. I think they have been trailblazers in the sense of changing designs to be more functional, more efficient, more environmental friendly, more safety conscious. Like I remember being in the building in London, in Canary Wharf there recently, and they just put in the laying grid ceiling, the suspended ceiling, but they never put the tiles in.
Okay.
And then they kind of like just done the usual like Starbucks where they just painted
the stuff above, which I don't mind that look.
And then they put even the lagging was painted the same colour. Yeah. Now I don't know if you could do that. Obviously, the paint might cost you a fortune if it was a special paint or whatever else. But I was looking at it and going, that's so basic, but it's so functional, and it's like nobody cares.
Nobody does. No,
it's going to get done. Yeah. Like but back to your hospital case, like. From my experience in construction, hospitals were always the ones that never made money.
Never did.
like, you know, someone turns around and says, actually, we're not going to have that size bed. We're going to have a different size bed, or the lockers
Yeah.
can't come in at the size they come in. So we're going to change the lockers. So that double socket will have to move.
Yeah.
And then someone says, yeah, that's okay, no problem. Somebody verbally says, yeah, that double socket's all right. And by the time double sockets get moved, after already being put into position,
Yeah.
you could be into hundreds of thousands
Yeah.
in terms of claims.
Yeah.
And I seen a company we worked for at the time where people had been signing off, the foreman had been signing off
Yeah.
on changes.
Yeah.
And then not signing off because things just got too busy.
Too busy.
And
Verbal
then
instructions and
when
get
you went
closed
to the
out.
final account, no, I'm not paying for that. And pretty much brought the company to its knees nearly in terms of, you know, just that one change.
Yeah.
You know, so like in terms of yourself, where did you go in terms of going out on your own? When was that period? When was that eureka moment?
Yeah, so basically, when I came back from Saudi Arabia, I noticed the industry again. Very kind of, for me, I wanted to move into another industry. Prior to going out to Saudi, I'd already started working in rail. So I started doing a lot of work for rails, doing some CRE stuff, and also part of handback. So helping install bridges on the Southern Eastern line, and then also then done worked on a few depots. So when I came back, the same said friend that protected me from
The plank.
the plank. Basically, he rang me up and said, "Look, there's a great opportunity. Why don't you come in and be employed?" Bearing in mind, I'd been self-employed all my life.
Yes,
apart
okay.
from a YTS, self-employed.
Yeah.
And basically never had anything to fall back on. If I lost a job, you lost your job.
Yeah.
Thank God, I was quite easy to find jobs anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, because self-employed, once you got a good name in engineering or
Yeah.
project management, people are after you.
And you have a network.
Yeah, and you got a network. So I went into rail for a while, and I was living then in Surrey, and I had to drive all the way over to Scrubs Lane, which is the old Eurostar depot, which was taking hours. I wasn't enjoying life.
Well, you were married though at this stage, yeah?
No, I was 2-3 years into my relationship with Laura.
Okay.
She never came out to Saudi Arabia because I wouldn't bring her out there.
Yeah.
So we ended up holidaying in places like Mexico and gone to Thailand and places like that.
Yeah.
When she came over. But then I just sat down, and do you know what I said to her one morning? I said, opened up not the one morning, in the evening, I said, she went, "What's this?" I said, it's the company I'm setting up. Just like that. Laptop opened up. It was a W12 postcode, which W12 was at Loftus Road. Me and Kevin and a few of our friends used to go to QPR all the time.
QPR, yeah.
So I named it after W12, which was the postcode of QPR. And it was on a London street sign. I decided to go into recruitment first because I had a good in with scaffolding companies, because I had a very good reputation with scaffolding companies, and scaffolding companies are always looking for scaffolders. So I had a big book, and what I'd done throughout my career, I'd listed out on I called it a Shane Black book, effectively. Everybody that I worked with that was good and potentially bad, but everyone that was good was in that book, effectively. And I found I had a natural database. So I decided what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I sat and spoke to my wife, spoke to her mother as well, because she was quite heavily involved in us. She's a bereaved mother, so she was basically with us all the time anyway.
Yeah.
And just said, "Look, this is what I'm going to do." And they both believed that I could physically do it, and also mentally could do it.
Yeah.
Now, ask me if I'd do it again, because I've learned a hell of a lot of lessons along that way. Because I wasn't born to be. I was said at the beginning, I was born to be an engineer. I wasn't born to be a director, wasn't born to be a CEO, wasn't born to be a chairman. I had to learn them along the ways. Or people like Richard Stone, who you've just had a conversation with.
Yeah.
He's a very good mentor. Ned, he came in and helped me make better decisions.
That's a brilliant point that you bring up. Like,
Better
the
decisions.
amount of people that think that just because they're a one-person band that they don't need to have a mentor or a coach. Now, I'm not talking about the charlatan coaches. I'm talking about
Proper coaches.
you know, has lived the experience, can walk the walk, and if you pick up the phone, you get a clear answer. You don't get this, wayward sort of charlatan type of advice.
I think there's a lot with that kind of like, there has been a born or a hype of a lot of people that can give business mentoring just because they've gone online and done a course. You actually want to find them people who have actually gone through, be it liquidations or insolvencies because of things out of their control, or people that have had,
and even failed, people that failed
failure
themselves.
in my world, to be honest with you, in all honesty, Gavin, failure is not failure. Failure is a learning curve for us to learn from it. If you do it again,
That's
and
your
do
fault.
it again.
That's your fault.
Einstein says you're an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, learn from your failures. Don't write them down and make sure you don't do them again,
Yeah. Oh,
or
that's not going to
get
happen
better
again.
advice.
Yeah.
And the one thing I will probably say to people is it's very hard to set up a business by yourself with zero money. I set up basically, I probably after a while, I probably had about 50 grand to set up. And that's a lot of money really,
Yeah.
because I'd just come back from Saudi Arabia.
It's more than most.
Yeah. So I set up a 50 grand. That 50 grand went very quickly.
Yeah.
Because I had to use it for wages, had to use for X, Y, and Z. But I went
Materials.
into recruitment to build a database because I wanted to get a good book of workers, because I was always going to go down the route of doing maintenance.
Yeah.
So then what happened was I organically started shifting away from recruitment. I went into maintenance, and maintenance then became my kind of foothold into the industry. Now, what I will say is it's the biggest problem that business owners or new startups have is they feel that they have to do everything themselves.
They do.
And where I actually quickly learned is I can't do everything myself. I've got knowledge in certain areas. I'm very comfortable with that knowledge. I'm very experienced. I'm actually can work the hours of probably two people. But actually making decisions on framework contracts, JCTs, I had zero understanding about. I'm not looking at the spike in obviously what rates might look like if there's a spike in materials and steel. Yeah? Yes, I had a little bit of commercial training.
Yeah, but
nothing
hedging
to the
that
head.
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So what I decided to do is yes, I did battle a few times with a few the business owners that were in my business. I've made some failures in decision making by thinking that I need to bring in people as directors. Didn't need to do it. My wife was probably the best director that I will ever have.
Hands up, I have one.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, buddy, it's a miracle to work with your wife, live with your wife, and
she's going to give you she's going to give it to you straight between the eyes.
and you should listen to it.
Yeah, and rightly or wrongly, and sometimes she mightn't have the full facts.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. But she's
fact that
actually seeing something that's not blinkered.
Yeah, and the fact that she's actually got something in your head, and then but some people automatically think, she doesn't know, or you know, I'm doing it. I'm the one out there. You know, like no. I'm telling you this.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think the one thing that I will say add to that part is when you get a blueprint that works, it doesn't matter what industry or what construction or whatever it is. If you can get the back office right, your structure, your processes, and your meetings, listening and support. If you can get all that right, you can diversify your business in any direction.
Yeah, and
that's where you shouldn't turn around and previously before. Yeah, so I was probably like, well, what does Laura know? She doesn't know. She's never worked a day in construction in her life. But actually, Laura worked for Santander and big corporate. So what do I know? So actually, by the time you listen to people giving you the advice and it's not being blinkered, you feel that you evolve and you unshackle. So where I was like, well, I can do this, I need to do that. I'm not going to spend the money here because I can do it myself or I can learn it. Actually, it stopped me going out and doing what I've done best. Driving projects, getting clients in and being client side. Actually, so if I went back again, I would probably I'd spend more money with getting better advice from Neds.
Yes.
And having an advice
That's a massive take home. That's a massive take home.
And don't be scared to turn around and put your hand up and speak to or make calls. Now, I've got a number of people that
keep it lean.
Keep it lean. Be honest. Be vulnerable. Vulnerability in construction or in any business is not, again, a weakness. Vulnerability is saying, hi, guys, I don't know what the feck I'm doing. Can you please give me a bit of advice? Because I could then lose my house. I could destroy my family. And more importantly, when you have employees, you haven't just got all your decisions to take on board. You've got 14, 50, 100 potential mortgages that you might cause issues
100%.
to by making the wrong decision because you think it's a good decision because you've not had the advice.
Yeah, well, no, don't take this up the wrong way.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be a bid vest, you know. So when you say to yourself, like you're in the facility management business, I'm not going to be a bid vest.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm never going to have all those corporate offices and locations or wherever else. But you know what? I'm going to have my own miniature version of bid vest or whatever that facility management, and that's going to be my. You know, empire. Yeah. You know, and I think that some people lose the run of themselves and think, I'm after getting a £15 million contract. Like, what's involved with that? And you spoke about the Ned and the coach earlier on. If you get the right guy and he looks at that and he says, you can't take that because that's going to bring down your small little empire that you're building. And which is more important to you? Your mortgage, your family, your lifestyle and your free time, or taking the risk and doing that job?
And I think that's where it is. Where with any business, I think the only advice that I also give people that are listening is look for your sweet spot Because if you go above that, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you can see these companies, for instance, there's a number of companies that posted £400 million last year, but made £1.3 million.
Yeah.
Now, that for me is scandalous. So if you need to then do the jump, look at where your actual returns are. Because if
Yeah.
you've got something that's good enough for now, that's doing well, don't be
Yeah.
going after the £15 million projects because they're fraught with their own normal contractual issues. And that's
Yeah.
where really why I've built a business of going after the real small five week to 20 week programs that are not as risk they're a risk every
Yeah.
contract, every
It's
program
more
risky,
condensed
but
though.
it's more condensed and you can protect your risk, and also with more
Brilliant. Take
more
home.
importantly you can get your money back off the client that you're lending it to, because as a contractor subcontractor
Yeah.
we effectively load the project with our skills, our materials, our fans, all accreditations, and then we put the labor on site. We do all the work. We then pay all the material, and we don't get that money back for 60 days plus. But we've
Yeah.
never been given a deposit, so we are at risk of putting 200, 300, 400,000 pounds on a project to start with a week.
Yeah.
So it's making sure you have the right relationship and the right understanding to be able to get that money back, because that's what helps the wheels turn around on every
Love
business.
it. I absolutely love it, Shane.
Yeah.
In terms of, you're doing a lot of really good stuff to give back, and I'd like you to talk about that because I think it's a massive take home for the audience,
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what you're doing in the tech space. I
Yeah.
know you're doing stuff. I know that might, in terms, and then you've also got a personal capacity
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you're doing stuff. Like, where are you today in terms of?
So giving back. So basically, I was recognised. I've been given the freedom of the city. So I got the freedom of the city of London, and I was recognised for neurodiverse champion for bringing concepts and, more importantly, technology to the forefront of most businesses when they're needed to understand they've got a neurodiverse audience within their own employees.
Wow.
And also, more importantly, then out the door to their audience.
Yeah.
How are you making it fair for your staff to be able to come to you and say, I'm creatively gifted, but I'm really struggling with the literature you keep sending me. Yeah. What's the difference? How are you going to make a difference to their life? Or do they feel included or excluded when they want to put their hand up and they feel it might be a stupid response, but actually no stupid response, because every response should be welcomed with open hands, because you might not afford it yourself.
Yeah.
So with that, and then also what I found was when I was doing my neurodiversity, and my family are very military background, going back all the way back to the Napoleonic Wars, etc. Neopolitic Wars, sorry, First World War, Second World War. So I've always had a real want, and I was in the Army Cadets, went into TA for a bit as well. Probably was going to go into the Irish Fusiliers until the mother said no, and you're not going into the English Army. You need to go home, back to Ireland. So I actually then kind of gave that idea up, and because I wanted to be an engineer, Royal Engineers, effectively as well. So I was looking at two, but then I got the opportunity to kind of work in RC frame. But what I found was within homeless cases, there was over 700 army leavers sleeping on the streets every night. Also, as well, a lot of kids that are in their teenage years are sleeping on the streets because they've been shunted to society because they're lost. And some of that might be down to their neurodiverse mindset. It might be down to the fact that they're struggling themselves. So I wanted to see how can I also change lives while I've changed my own life, but also been able to be successful. And people measure things in success. My success is my return of investment was to set a business up so I can decide to drop my kids to school or pick my kids up every day. And that's my choice. Now, there's very rare days that I don't get to do either one or the other.
Yeah.
But also, the other part I wanted to do is make sure nobody ever felt as lonely as I did as a child.
Wow.
Or growing up, all the way up until I was 30. And that's a long time.
Yeah.
So I've then started working, trying to get homeless people off the streets. So I'm an ambassador for 4 homeless centres, and also an ambassador for a military charity as well. So that's my stuff given back. Now, the other thing that I've given back is I've developed a number of technologies to support people from not only in construction, but all different mindsets. I'm also heavily dyslexic, so I don't like writing. Like if you asked me to draw on that wall, yeah, I could do it quite easily, to the point that I actually got in a lot of trouble as a child for wall
Graffiti.
art. Wall art.
Wall art.
Yeah, so basically that was my kind of part of giving back, and I still give back to this day. I'm also setting up a neurodiverse channel for basically to work with people, to educate people in construction, be in business, be at home, mentor parents, because I've done a lot of programs. I've written white papers that I'm getting underwritten at the moment by a number of universities. So watch this space. I'll be releasing something to do supporting a neurodiverse, more around ADHD, because that's my background, but also it's an inclusion of everybody.
Yeah, you're a highly inspiring person, and as I said earlier on, you are humble. You're not one of these. I don't know. I think you you in the construction space is so needed at the moment in terms of getting out and, you know, winning the hearts and minds of people that might be isolated or feeling that they're under pressure, or that they can't do this anymore, and that, you know, they're stuck in this mad conundrum of risk management, you know, jobs going wrong, you know, taking all that personal chaos and trauma on top of their shoulders. And like, you're a shining beacon and a light for many of these people. And, you know, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they connect with you?
Look, you're more than welcome to follow the channel's Neurodiversity. So it's basically Neuro Ninja on YouTube. I've also got it on all of your socials. But if you do want to get in touch with me, I'm welcome to anybody to get in touch with me on LinkedIn. Shane Manogue on LinkedIn. DM me if you want me to talk about anything that I've spoken to today.
Yeah.
But for me, it's I really resonate what you just said there, because really, without me being fixated by going into construction, but also having the guys and girls around me when I was going to site that saw when I was down, saw when I was struggling, saw when I had problems at home, saw when my relationships were struggling. This is when I was younger. That saved me quite a lot because of the camaraderie that we had on site. 100%. But also as well, bearing in mind that we're on site more than we are at home with our own family.
That's right. Yeah.
We're in our work boots more than we are in our own beds. Yeah. So believe in the fact when somebody is not talking today, or you've had not been themselves, why don't you just put your arm around them and ask them if they're okay? Because
brilliant.
For me, I don't think enough people talk up, speak up. But let's get construction talking. Let's support each other, because without us human beings doing the great things we are doing, we would still be living in underneath trees or in huts.
100%.
Now, if we can build amazing skyscrapers and technology, surely we can listen to each other.
Well, on that note, Shane Manogue, you're an absolute hero, and I'd love to have you on. We're going to put on the links to all your charities. Perfect. I'm going to put the links to all your businesses, and you're definitely. You'd love to have you back on the podcast.
Plenty more to talk about.
Plenty more to talk about. Listen, thanks very much for coming in, Shane. You're an absolute legend, and we wish you every continued success.
Thank you, Gavin.